Jason, appreciate you having me or having me. I appreciate you being on the podcast. I'm so used to being on everybody else's podcast. Now to have my own again is interesting. But I've been wanting to do this because it was something I did in the past. But I think you know there's a lot of like people in the online space that for certain reasons make it seem like building a business is like the easiest thing to do. And I think for those of us that are in it, we know how hard it can be in the challenges and setbacks. And I think when you're not connected with other people in the industry and you have no idea of what it takes, it's easy for people to want to give up because you feel like the challenges and the setbacks that you might face are unique to you. When in reality, we all go through that. So I want to have more people on this podcast where we can talk about like what it really takes for us to get to where we're at. So I really appreciate you coming on, man.
Of course, man. I'm excited for this.
I think me and you met in 2020, right? Like in Dan Henry's group.
Yep. Yeah, I think so.
And
Yeah.
and then I ended up joining one of your programs in 2021. I remember I was living in Colombia at the time. And one of the things I've always appreciated or appreciated about you is like you just seem like a real genuine dude, bro. Like I can tell, most people can tell, like you're not just someone out here that's just like only trying to get sales. But I like it because you're also not someone out here that's afraid to go get sales. So you're like, I'm here to help you, but I'm also trying to like build a business as well. But you're also like everyone that when I talk to them about you, they're like, oh, he's such a genuine dude. And there's not a lot of people like that. So I always appreciated that about you, man. And that's one of the reasons I was like, man, I gotta have you on here. Um, I think one thing that we can start with is where did this journey kind of begin of like where like for you to get to where you're at? Like you're from Australia, like at what point did you decide to even get into doing what you're into like doing now? Like how did that even come about?
Yeah, I mean, like starting from the beginning, I'll quickly run through that. Is like I graduated college. I was on a soccer scholarship over here in America. Came home to Australia. I couldn't really get a job. Like no one would hire me. My degree didn't really matter. So I started my own
What was
business.
your degree in?
It was an undergrad in entrepreneurship, and then I actually got my MBA because my soccer scholarship was for so long because I could accelerate my MBA. So I got everything I could from the American education system. uh,
Oh wait, so you came to school, you were going to school in the US and then went back to Australia.
yeah, I went back home. Yeah, yeah, because it was at the
Okay.
time. It was in 2016 that I graduated, and like in America at that time, immigration was like very locked down and tight. So no one would really hire in America. So I just moved home. But
Oh,
yeah, no
okay.
one would hire me in Australia either. So yeah, that was tough. And then I was doing my agency. There was a struggle there for a bit, but then we grew it eventually. But it felt like kind of empty. It was like a little bit, cool, but people would have to afford these $2,000 a month retainers and then 10 to 20 grand a month in ad spend. So these businesses were already doing pretty well. So my brother and I started a Facebook group to get more like agency clients, but then no agency client was ever signed from that group because people were just reaching out wanting to know how we did what we did with the agency. I was like, okay, well, let's try this. So I just started doing coaching. Like I put together some like 6-week program for like $600. And my first ever client, Nick, he was living in a 1-bedroom apartment with his 2 kids and his wife, and he was working it was actually a studio apartment, and he was working a like overnight security job. And then we were able to like take him to like 10K a month, 20K a month, quit his job, and like now he's got like a nice house and stuff like that. Another client who we're working with right now, he's like done over $2 million since that program. And I don't credit myself with all of their success, but like that was the impact that I was looking for. And so I decided to go all in on coaching and consulting side of things, and I've loved it ever since. I just think that like there's two ways to look at it. Is it selfish to want to help people because you secretly like you feel good when you help someone, but also I think that that's a good thing to do that. Like you've always got to realize that you have your own motivations for doing things. So yes, I want to help people because it feels good, but also because like helping people is a great thing to do. So that's why we kind of transitioned into the coaching consulting side of things.
So the thing I think everyone hears, like when you tell that story, is like he couldn't get a job. He moved home. He started an agency. It took 5 or 7 days, and then they're just a millionaire, which
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure is not the case. So like, how did you go from like you're going to college with, I would assume, maybe the goal of maybe starting a business, I guess, since you did go for entrepreneurship, but
Yeah.
you're trying to get a job, no one's hiring you. You have to go back to Australia. You're in Australia, no one's hiring you there either. How do you go from that point to then starting like the agency, the first thing that you did with your brother? Like, what was that like?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. I think it was the best thing in the world that no one would hire me. Because like I was actually like I loved entrepreneurship. My dad was an entrepreneur, all of that. I always wanted to start a business, but I think I wanted to get experience in another way before I went into my own thing. And so I'm so glad that no one ever hired me. Right. And the cool thing is like we went up against the agencies that wouldn't hire me and I stole clients from them. And like they're
Oh,
so
that's fire.
yeah. But no, it was a long journey, man. Like honestly, it was probably 2-3 years before I even quit my like I was working at a warehouse, right? I was unloading containers. I hired my brother for free, like he wasn't getting paid and he was just driving Uber. We were doing whatever we could for money while we were growing this thing, and we didn't really know what we were doing. It was a really tough journey, and it was 2 to 3 years at least before we were able to quit our job, and then even probably another couple of years before we were really able to like make a real impact and dent in our incomes. That it took time. Like it was a long journey for sure.
So like that right there, I think is something that I want to dive into a little bit, because I think a lot of us are sometimes in that 2 to 3 year period, and we don't hear that from other people. We always hear the shortened version that you said before, and in our minds it seems like it's very short. It's like, oh, he just started an agency with his brother and right away it blew up, and a lot of us
Yeah.
don't hear like, dude, you yes, you're seeing everyone with these guarantees of 60 to 90 days results, but you're not seeing that it took them maybe 2 3 years to get to where they're at. So
Mm.
like during that 2 to 3 years you have this job, it doesn't sound like it's something that's super exciting that you're maybe passionate about doing. So how did you stay focused through that time long enough for that to like take off? Like what was that 2 to 3 years like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that like now I recognize what I was doing back then, but I didn't at the time. Is that now like a lot of people would call it, it's like belief, right? Like you just believe in yourself so much. And I think that I didn't actually believe in myself. I was just delusional in a good way.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
didn't really know the reality that like this could fail. I refused to accept that. You know, we went through several tough times where we lost clients, refunds, overdrawn accounts, tax bills, all of this sort of stuff. Like all of that happened. But I just refused to like let go of this. I think that that is the best thing for entrepreneurship is like, I see all these stats like 90% of businesses fail after a year or like 70% after 10 years or whatever it is. And I'm like, you fail by giving up. Like that's all you fail
Yes.
is, you know. And I just think that I was so delusional in the best way. Like now there's less delusion. Like I know I could fail, and I'm more fearful now that we do have money and we are growing. But I have belief and faith now, whereas before it was just delusion. And I think that you kind of have to be that way. And that mindset is that nothing should affect you. You should not let like losing a client, losing a sale, losing anything like that affect you because it'll just like snowball from there. You need to be so convicted in what you're doing and strong and believe in it. Then the 2 to 3 year period, it feels like it's tough, but it goes by pretty quickly.
Yeah, I can definitely relate. I feel like that was the same thing with me, where it's just like I was talking to someone about this not too long ago. I was like, they were saying like, I don't think I'm ever going to make it. I can never do this, and I'm like, listen, even if that's true, you're setting yourself up to be depressed. It's better to at least be delusional and never be right, but at least live life, like at least hopeful that you're going to make it and
Yeah.
maybe be wrong than to just always think you're never going to make it. But I think one thing that's tough, I can say for me and other people that I know, is we're surrounded constantly by people that don't believe that for themselves. And so when you're going to work for 2 years every day, your agency isn't working, you have overdrafts, you have refunds, maybe they know about this. It's easy for them to say, Jason, you went to school, you need to quit this, be more realistic, do that. Did you have like people like that in your life at that time? And if so, like how did you manage to keep their thoughts out of your head?
Yeah. I mean, I actually think that it was a lot of my personal, like, so I'm very lucky that my dad was in entrepreneurship,
True,
as well as my
true.
mom. So both of them like know and were always supporting me and stuff like that. But I was always like, I think that sometimes a lot of people think like entrepreneurship is quit everything, live on someone's couch, eat ramen noodles, right? Like
Yeah,
yes, I
yeah.
was working in a warehouse, right? And like unloading containers and stuff like that. But I'd work so much overtime that I would still be earning like 800 to $1,000 a week, right? So I
Okay.
was okay financially because every cent was saved. I was living with my dad. You know, I'd barely spend any money. So I was building that up. And so it was a much less risky approach. So no one would really question it. And if anyone really did, honestly,
Yeah.
I would like just I was so deluded that I would just like tell them to piss off. Like that's just the reality of it. Like I just didn't care what anyone thought. I was lucky I had enough support from my family. But then anyone that didn't support me, I don't think I ever got that pushback from other people because when you meet someone who's just so convicted and so strong willed in what they do, is you're like, this guy's crazy, but like he'll do what he says. You know, and that's like me.
Yeah.
Like Elon Musk goes, he wants to like make sure that civilization lasts beyond him on another planet, right? And when you meet him, he's probably so convicted in that, like, this is the person who's crazy enough to actually do it, you know? So that's kind of my conviction. And I never really dealt with that. And I never really, even if it happened, I wouldn't let it affect me anyway.
What was your it's very interesting that you're working with like your sibling as well.
Yep.
So I'm very fortunate that as I've been building like my business, even with my wife, she's been very supportive. I see
Yep.
sometimes people talk to me and they have a husband or they have a wife and they're constantly asking them, how much money is this making? Is this going to take off? Like when is this doing? And that nagging can be very discouraging. So like, did your brother have the same mindset? Were you having to encourage him? Were you guys both on the same page? Like, what was that like as you guys were
Yeah, that's a
building
good
that?
question. In the initial, no, because he quit a good job that he was working for and he was dream career to come work for me for free. You know, there was a lot of tough times. Like he could have walked into a six-figure job because he has good experience, his resume is good, he was good at what he was doing. He could have walked into a six-figure job but decided against it to come work for me. And like obviously it was the best decision ever because now he's in a like multi six-figure job and you know it's pretty cool. So I think that we were both on that same page. And then like going to the spouse side of things, like I've been with my wife now. Well, she's been my wife for like 3-4 years, and we've been together through this whole process. Is I was just so deluded that like she was convinced that I was going to make it. Right, like she just always believed in me, even when like her parents, and I love her parents, were very close, would say like, "Oh, why don't you like go get a job in this area, or like I can help you with this?" And I'm like, "I don't need that." You know, and now they obviously see it like it's okay now, but it's you know, I just had that
Yeah.
unwavering belief that no one could dissuade me.
Was there anything that you were doing during that time that helped you like maintain that mindset? I know like for me, and we said we'll talk about like the faith aspect in a minute, but practically outside of that, for me it was like finding the Ty Lopez or the Gary Vee on YouTube, podcasts, social media, reading books on mindset. Was there anything other than just having that belief in yourself that like fueled you like as you were going through that 2 3 year period?
Yeah, it's a good. I saw a lot of people. I've seen this saying being pushed out. I don't know who started it, but someone said that they're a belief collector, right? And so when someone else has a belief, they collect that belief and they own it in themselves. I
Oh,
think in the
nice.
initial is that you are in the initial, there's like discipline and motivation. A lot of people say like motivational videos and stuff are pointless. I agree in a sense. You need to be disciplined and do it when there's no motivational video. But I think that you need to fuel yourself so freaking much with that stuff in the initial. I would listen to every Gary Vee podcast, watch every
True.
video, watch every YouTube stuff. And like a lot of people say, you get distracted and confused. Yeah, maybe I did, but at the same time, I was a belief collector. I was collecting Gary Vee's beliefs about me and other people he was talking to, and I just filled myself up with that. Is because when you do one thing, you're likely to do it again, right? So when you have watched this YouTube video instead of watching Netflix at night, and I've got nothing wrong with it, I watch plenty of Netflix, but in the initial, feed your mind with this stuff that's just going to keep you going. And like, I think you need that artificial motivation at the start. Like half the books back here are like not the experienced business books and all of that. They're the basic ones that just get you motivated and pumped up and keep going. And I think that in the initial, you really, really need that. Just fuel yourself constantly with your obsession, and that's what really got me through in the start.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like if you're a parent and you, I mean, you know, you have like a new baby or a new
Yeah,
child. It's like when you're teaching them to walk, it's not just like in the beginning it is like, you can do it, you can do it, come on, come to mommy, come to daddy. Now if they're like 5, 6 years old and you're still having to do that, that's something wrong. So I think that's where
Yeah,
people rely on that forever. But I think in the beginning, like you said, I like the way you put it, where it's like you're basically borrowing their beliefs for you, then you take those beliefs and then now it's time to take the action. So all
exactly.
right, so you're going through this 2 3 year period building this agency. What was the service that you guys were providing for people?
Just like Facebook ads and like some website design stuff.
So then from there, you're like, all right, let's create a Facebook group to get clients. But then people started seeing like, hey, you're growing an agency. I want to know how to grow an agency.
Yes, exactly.
And then so then from there, you kind of transition to where you guys are at now. So what this is something that this is another thing. So I think a lot of us sometimes we college or whatever happens, and then we're like, man, I really want to do my own thing. That takes the 2 3 years sometimes to get to that point. Then you start
Yeah.
doing that thing, and then God or your vision or whatever slightly changes, and it's like, okay, here's another opportunity, which is another risk because you might be leaving something that's profitable to do this other thing. So what was that transition like? Was that something that was easy? Did that take another 2 3 years? Was that a lot of friction? Like, what was that? What was that
We
decision like to even do that?
Yeah, I think the turning point really was a Tony Robbins event, and if you've ever been to one, he has this saying called
No.
"burn the boats." Yeah, like burn the
Okay.
boats is essentially you like invade the land, burn the boats, and you own that land, so you can't go back. There's no going back from there. And he said that throughout the time, and Chris and I were like, "Yeah, that's what we need to do." And at the time, we had some difficult clients that we just didn't want to work with, so we fired them. We kept a couple of clients, so we were paying bills, and then the transition was very easy because when you start posting online and documenting what you're about is that people will listen. Yeah, it's just friends and family, but you get in another Facebook group, 10 people see that stuff. You just keep putting yourself out there and exposing yourself, and more people will see it. So we kind of had a pretty not a seamless transition, like it was tough at first, but it was relatively easy because we had some clients that we still kept, and we still even have clients to this day, and then we kind of transitioned from there.
One thing I talk about with the people that we're working with now is this concept. For me, I call it like a big crazy dream. So
Mhm.
whenever I joined Dan Henry's thing, my big crazy dream at the time was I want to start an online business that makes 10K a month and allows me to travel once every 3 months. I remember that's like the my
Mhm.
main focus. And I think that gave me something, like you said, to be delusional about, to where when it was hard, I wouldn't give up. And that's what I was pushing towards. So my question is, whenever you made this transition into coaching, was there something like that for you? Because I think a lot of people, what I see is they're just like, I want to have a 6 figure business or a 7 figure business so I can go on Facebook and post my Stripe screenshots. But there's not
Mhm.
really a lot of purpose behind it. So either they get to that point and they feel unsatisfied, or they don't get there and they give up. But was there kind of like a big crazy dream, so to speak, of that you were like, man, this is the purpose of why I'm doing this?
So I have a kind of a contrarian thought to that is that I actually think that purpose is found through the work and you will find what your long-term purpose is when you do the work. So in the initial like kind of it's similar to what you just said. It's like you wanted to make 10K, right? Like that was the goal. For me, someone said to me once when I was working at the warehouse, he's like, "Oh, Jason, like this is where I got my beliefs from." He said, "Jason will be a millionaire by 30." Right? And I turned 30 this year and like we've achieved it depending on how you we've made millions of
Look at
dollars,
it.
right, in the
Yeah.
business. We've spent a lot too, though. So don't get me wrong. But we, uh, we I did that. So, and I think that like that was my north star. Is like I wanted to prove people right, and then obviously prove people wrong as well. But then I think that that doesn't last very long. So when we actually did cross the $1 million mark a few years ago, um, we actually didn't even really like notice or say anything because we were in our Stripe account, we actually set up a new one. So we had 800K, but then we
Ah,
had
yeah.
200. So it didn't like say it until like 6 months later, but like we crossed it. And we actually crossed it a long time before that because of like bank transfers and stuff. But it didn't really fulfill us. So we're like, well, we just hit our goal that we wanted to 5 years before we even like set it as a goal. Like now what? So then we kind of had to find like a real purpose behind wanting to do that. And I think that it comes through time is a lot of people go, well, I want to find my purpose and what I'm meant to do. you find that as you go. And sometimes it
I
might
agree
be
with that.
like there's a lot of people who are like engineers and stuff like that. I think that like that's your purpose, and maybe you can start a business from that later on. Like, don't try to be an entrepreneur just because you see you want to find purpose. Work, we're here to
True,
work.
true.
I like believe that like work is a good thing. You don't want to like, I don't like people who are like, I want to escape and retire. I'm like, work is a good thing. We're here to serve, and we're here to help people. So that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Man, first of all, bro, congrats on that, man. Because as somebody that knows what it's like to have a big crazy dream, so to speak, of, and have those times where you feel like giving up, it's always amazing when you don't give up and you actually get there. Like it's like the best feeling, you know. It's like when you know that you could have given up for those 2 3 years, and then you're like, dude, I'm so thankful that I didn't give up because where could I be right now? So, dude, congrats to you for that, bro.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Um, So, then what was I going to ask you? Um, One thing that I think, and me and you were talking about this before, is, and this is what I think was difficult for me, right? So when we started our online business in 2020, I think the thing I was fortunate about that held me back a lot of times before is like a lot of other voices. I would start something, and then family would be like, "Why isn't this working?" or blah blah. Like it gets very overwhelming. But in COVID, no one could come over. You didn't have to invite people over. You didn't have to go to birthday parties, so I could just lock in. But I got to a point where I was doing all I could do, and I realized like if I'm really going to persevere through these hard times, like I have to tap into my faith. I have to rely on a higher calling, higher power. For me, that's God, right? I'm like, I gotta really tap into God and really be able to do this. What role has that played like in your life recently at that time, and what does that kind of look like for you?
Yeah. So I, I think that it's difficult because we grew up in not very a religious household, and maybe not anti-religion, but I think that like my mum experienced some things with religion, and her, like traditional upbringing wasn't like good for her, so she rebelled a little bit against it. So I never grew up in that space. We had it at school, but we went to an all boys school. So when you're like in there in chapel, as we called it, like singing the songs, like everyone's making fun of it, and you can't really take religion too seriously, otherwise people make fun of you, right? And I think that that's a
Yeah,
horrible
true.
way, but it was the reality, right? And I accept it. But I always believed that there was, I actually was not a non-believer, but I always believed that there was like the universe, and that's what I called it, right? And universe would guide me and push me. So for those initial few years, I always found that that was the guiding thing, is like the manifesting stuff by action and work, and that was big for me. And my wife is she's fairly religious. Her family is as well. So I always was offered. I was anti a little bit, and then in the past few years, I've gone on a journey where I wanted to have something that was bigger than myself, and I think that that is the like whatever you think with religion, I actually really admire and respect every single religion, because you're giving this power to something else. And I've been watching a little bit of Dave Ramsey because I'm working on some retirement stuff. And he says this saying that I really really like, is he says that like people ask him, how are you, and he goes, better than I deserve. And
Ooh,
it sounds like he's like not grateful, but that's because he's extremely grateful for what God has given him. And me, like adapting that belief and being religion being the guiding principle for my actions, and like what am I doing to honor God, and how am I acting as a man of faith, like it has guided me in such a better direction. And it's been a tough journey, because like there's like I'm scientific sometimes. I'm like, where's proof and this and that. And I think that like listening to more and digesting as much as I can with the religious side of things has really helped me. And I think that my business has taken off since I've adapted that. I'm not saying God's going to be like your magic revenue stream. I'm not saying that at all. Is I think that the
yeah.
faith, having a guiding principle, is a big thing. And I struggle to talk about this. Like I was actually really excited to talk about this topic. I'm fumbling a little bit because it makes me nervous. It's a little bit uncomfortable, but it's something that I need to do and something that I want to pursue down. So yeah, that's kind of the journey it's played, especially in the last couple of years. It's been really big, and is that having that faith that I'll give you a perfect example. Is that my brother and I we've made lots of money. Like there's no doubt about that. But we've sometimes struggled to keep it because we've spent it in different areas. You know, we buy a fancy toy, whatever it is. We both have new cars in the business, all of this sort of thing. And then there's been times because about decisions like that where we had a bad month and the money dries up and we have to do things quickly and stuff like that. And then my brother and I decided to take like real charge of our finances and really like dial in where every dollar goes. And now we're able to, like, a bad month will still be a good month because we have all of these investments and all of these other things, so the money keeps piling up. And I, brother, is that like God put us through that journey so we can now know how to handle money. And I think that like that is such a
Yes.
good way to frame things. Is a lot of people go, why me? God doesn't exist. I had this car accident, I broke my arm. The only way you get courage is by being in a situation where you need to be courageous. The only way you are strong is being in a situation where weakness isn't an option. And I think like God puts you through those trials and tribulations for a reason, so you come out better and stronger. And it might feel like, I don't know who says this, but they say, like, I think it might be in the Bible, is like uh, he only tests the people strong enough to handle it, right?
Yeah.
Or something along those lines. And I think that like that has been big for me as well. Is like this is a test when things get tough. So sorry for rambling. As I said, my thoughts aren't cohesive on the topic, but like thing that I
No, I really appreciate it, bro. I think I appreciate you because it's a perfect example of like we don't need to be perfect to have these topics. I feel like people think that in order to talk about God or faith or religion, they have to be this person that never sinned, memorize every part of the Bible. And I think we look at religion as like a bunch of rules. And I think for me, I'm like, especially when it comes to entrepreneurship, I think it's less about that and it's more about do you have a relationship with God, a personal relationship, and are you trusting Him as you are being obedient in the thing? So even like for us in our community, we do a call every Monday where we start off with like how like reading and discussing a Bible verse on having faith, how to apply that as an entrepreneur, and then praying for each other. And somebody's like, I'm not really like I don't really pray that often. Like I need to wait until I get better. Kind of basically what they're saying. I'm like, replace the word praying with talking to, and you'll
sure.
understand it. So I'm like, it's not really about like this thing you see in the movies and the things you see these priests doing. It's just talking, just like you're doing with us. So I appreciate you for that, man. I think it's okay as entrepreneurs for us to have these conversations, and it's like we're all working towards it. And I think giving each other room to be like, okay, Jason's talking about his faith, but that might mean he still might do something either I disagree with or something that's not perfect because we're all not perfect. And I hate when somebody's like they don't believe in God, they start moving towards it, and then we start judging them on every single thing that they're doing, and it kind of pushes them away. It's like we got to give people uh, space to grow, you know?
It's really hard, and I think that like there's a lot of and I've been lucky is that I go to the gym with the pastor of the local church here, and I sat in the sauna with him for 30 minutes just talking about it. I told him I'm like, religion wasn't a thing for me until recently, and he said the exact same thing, and he's the pastor now of the church, right? Like, so I think that there's two wrongs in this situation. There's the people who aren't religious who mock people who are religious, and the people who are religious who mock people who aren't but trying to be religious, right? I think that that's
Yeah.
really wrong. Is that like everyone's journey with faith is different, and when you look at God and when you believe in it, is that I had to go through the journey of maybe not believing in him. And I had to go through the journey of struggling with this conversation in religion, because now I'm so convicted in it that when I listen, do you know, what's his name? George Janko. He has a podcast.
I don't think so.
No, he used to be with like Logan Paul and those guys. He used to do a podcast with them. And then he's
Oh,
transitioned to
yeah, 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 yeah. I've seen it. I've seen it. I know what you're talking about. Okay.
and he's on one. He's very religious, and every conversation he brings up a Bible verse. It's really, really strongly convicted. Is that he had to go through? He was getting mocked for his religion on other podcasts, and now his podcast is centered on faith, and he's interviewing people like Andrew Tate when they talk about God, and like whether you agree with him or disagree, it's just a very good conversation. And I think that like that is the way that we need to operate. And now listening to him talk about religion and God, and then I listen to other podcasts that don't have God or religion, I struggle to understand like what are their guiding principles. They're kind of just making stuff
Yeah,
up if they're into
yeah.
religion. Yeah, I
I think
think I've very like far and quick with this journey, but I'm glad I am.
I think like one thing that I have learned and I try to tell other people is like a lot of the stuff we're going through, we make it seem like we're the center of it and it's all about us. So it's like Jason,
Yep.
it's like when you're going through something, you're like, man, God has this purpose for me. And I think for you and your brother to make a lot of money, spend it, have to learn how to manage your money. Yeah, that helped you manage your money better. But now both of you have that knowledge and that story that is going to help so many more people. And sometimes I think that is what God has in mind. He's like, Jason, I know you guys are going to be good with money, but I need you to go through this. That way you can have your story and you can help these people. So now when you're on a podcast, now when you're speaking to the people that you help make money, you can give them this tips and these journeys, and you can say, hey, I know what it's like to spend 2 years, 3 years in a warehouse building, not knowing if this is going to work out. And I think sometimes we're so focused on like it has to work out for us that we don't realize that our story and the process we're going through is probably going to be more about helping someone else than it
So
is really
true.
about us.
Yeah, so true. And I think me going through that journey as well, that is true. It's more important for other people than myself, which is amazing. Like that's why I always see is like, they always say like you don't see the what God is working on, but he's working on something for what you're doing. And like even you just saying that now, I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like I didn't even see that. And now I need to talk about that more, and that will allow more people to and I've made a couple posts and people are like, oh, I'm making my first 8K a month. Like I'm like, dude, save 5 of it, 3 to taxes, and then like live off whatever else you have. Like that's and I think that stuff's important, and just will like that's a good message that I can bring through. I also think like one thing that I struggled with religion as well is that like money and religion is a lot of people in the like faith based are like money is the root of all evil, but like the actual it's a misquote when people say that. Isn't it the love of money is evil, not money itself? And people misquote it and think that money is the love of money is the problem, and you're supposed to be a steward of money for helping other people.
Yeah.
And you can see I've been like diving into a lot of things. I'm not an expert, but I've definitely been playing with this stuff, and it's been helpful. And so I think learning those lessons as well is big.
Yeah, man, I think there's a lot of Christians out here that make up excuses to not make an impact. So they would rather be keyboard warriors, point out what Jason's doing wrong, point out what this pastor's doing wrong, point out that this person is making money and they're evil. Rather, I'm like, all that stuff is cool if that's what you want to do, but have that same energy when it comes to showing us the fruit of your life. Like, what is it that you're doing? And I see so many of my Christian friends that I'm like, you're going on these missions trips, you're going out and trying to impact the world, but you have no money, you cannot help these people. Whenever you go through a hard time, you give up. So you cannot help these people persevere. Because you give up, you cannot help them have faith. All you can tell them to do is read a book, which is like, we don't need you to do that. Anyone could do that. And I think we need to be focused on, like you said, it's not about loving money and loving these things, but these are all tools that I feel like God gave us that we should be using. Like, bro, you like the type of money you're making, like you can, other than just praying for someone, you could actually help someone. And I think if we had more Christians that were had that mindset of like, I am going to do what God called me to do, and the money that He gives me, I'm going to use it to bless other people. I feel like we would be in a lot better position than a lot of people want everything for free. They think if you have money, it's evil. It's just a very, I think, limiting belief that holds a lot of people back, bro. And it's just like we should be the ones that control the money. That way, we can have more power in the world, rather than all these other people that don't love God making all the money. They make all the decisions. They can hold us back, and now the churches aren't even making any impact.
I actually think it's more selfish to not want to make money and to not want to grow, because like if you're a good steward and if you are a person of faith, you're going to be better in control of that money than other people who have evil intent. And there are a lot of people who do, right? And I think that's what's really important is like I need, not need, but I want to, and I should be making as much as possible so that I can live my mission and help more people. Right. And also I think that through our mission of what we're doing is like, I think that like my work is, if I help someone for free, it's not a handout, it's a hand up. Like it's taking them somewhere up, and then they will give that to someone else, right? It's not just giving and like not expecting them to work. It's giving them a purpose as well. And I think that like that's why I need to make more, because yeah, I need to be on that mission. I agree. I like that a lot.
So, like, speaking of that, one thing I want to make sure we're doing, it's funny because anytime that I go to like a church and there's like a guest speaker, like 9 out of 10 times they always will come up to me and be like, I have a word for you. They used to always tell me like, you and your wife are going to have your own ministry. And
Hmm.
they're like, I don't know what that looks like, but you guys are always going to have one, or you will have one eventually. And now that we're doing like this undeterred community where we're praying for entrepreneurs, we're doing all these things, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But one thing I want to do a better job of with what we're doing is I feel like in the business world, we're all about taking action, but we leave God out of it. So it's like you said, here's what to do, but what are the values or the principles? In church, it's all about having faith, but you have a lot of people that aren't taking action. So it's like they're believing that God is going to make them a millionaire, but like they don't actually go put in the work. So we want to merge the two. It's like, hey, we're having faith, we're trusting, but we're also taking action. So as people are having faith, as people are being delusional, as people are pushing through that 2, 3 years, whatever it is for them, what are maybe some practical tips that you would give for online entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general to say, hey, if you do these things while you're building your business during these hard times, this could help you generate the cash, this could help you grow your business. That way, as you're having faith, it can help you on the practical side, on the action side, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I think that the first thing that people need to do is we call it a daily actions list. And so anytime, like especially now with having a kid, and he's been sick recently for the last couple of days, so I've been at home, is that if I accomplish these 3 to 8 action things and I don't get anything else done for the rest of the day, it's still a productive day. And those are dollar productive activities, activities that attack the moving the needle forward, because 90% of the stuff we do every day is relatively pointless and doesn't have much of an impact. So if you have
Yeah.
a daily action list that grows over time, that you can consistently work on, because consistency compounds. That would be my biggest thing, is like I often changed what that looked like, and I shouldn't do that. In the first 2 to 3 years, stick with it and it will compound. It's just like going to the gym. You hit that muscle every Monday and it will grow and grow consistently, but you've got to keep doing it every Monday. You can't just do it once and then in 3 weeks. It's the consistency, I think, is the most important thing. And have those actions that even on a Saturday and Sunday that you can perform. That would be my biggest piece of advice, is like taking daily consistent action will beat anything else.
Is there anything on that list that you feel like every business owner should have on that? So they're like, hey, I'm going to make this list. You're like, definitely make sure you have these things on your list Monday through Friday.
Reach out to 50 customers, prospects. Like if you can reach 50 people a day, no matter what medium that is, if you're paying for ads, if you're cold emailing, if you're cold DMing, if you're making a post that is relevant and sees 50 people, is that would be the minimum that I would do every day, is reach out to 50 new potential people who can work with you. Because that is, like, honestly, if that's your only task for the day, that's fine with me, because that is the most important thing, is you need to focus on growth. Even if you've just made 10 sales and you had a, like yesterday we had a really good day, right? It was fantastic. Had a couple of painfuls, fantastic, but I wake up today and I still need to grow, because the problem with yesterday is we just lost our 2 best prospects because they bought from us. So now we need to keep
Yeah.
going and keep finding the new people, to reach out to. Even when times are good, you need to be focused on growing.
So two questions, two follow up questions with that. One thing I struggle with sometimes, and what I see other people struggling with, is focusing on the input versus the output, or the daily list versus the outcome. So sometimes it's like I want to book 2 sales calls versus focus on the 50, and if you just focus on the 50, the calls will come. But sometimes when you're not seeing the 2 calls or whatever it is that you're looking for, it can become difficult to keep doing that. So which one do you kind of find yourself focusing on more? Is it more like, hey, I just need to get these things done, the 50 reach outs or whatever it is, and then the results will happen. And if they don't happen, it's just, I just do the work. Or are you like, man, I really have to get these results like any way possible. And I'm not going to sleep until I get this result. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a good question. Is it's leading and lagging indicators. So the leading indicator is like reaching out to people. The lagging indicator is sales calls booked, right? And the lagging indicator is something you actually can't control. But you can control the input every single day of reaching out to 50 people. Now, you can't just be like, I talk about delusion, but you can't just be deluded and reaching out to people and for 3 months you've not booked a single call. You still need to see the back end results. And if you're not, you need to adjust the script, adjust who you're reaching out to, adjust things. You've got to use data with these decisions. But you can control what you can control, which is reaching out to people. So my focus is always that. And then the back end will eventually come. And sometimes it doesn't. Some weeks suck. Some weeks are fantastic. But the compounding effect, if you reach out to 50 people today, 50 tomorrow, in 2 months, 20 of those 100 people that you've reached out to might be open to working with you then. But they might not be on Wednesday, right? Like tomorrow they're not, but in 2 months they are. So that's why this consistency compounds. And eventually you'll hit a record month and be like, oh, what did I do different this month? Nothing. That's the point. You just, the work that you put in 2 months ago has helped you.
And so, like, one other question I have in terms of that, just because I always like to think of the questions people are going to ask, is like, you make this to do list, this daily list. One of them is to reach out to 50 people. One thing that comes to my mind, maybe comes to other people, is like, is reaching out pitching, or is reaching out even just building the relationship? How do you balance not just pitching 50 people every single day and not building a relationship, and not just building a relationship and never pitching? Like, what is that? I know for some people, it's like, how do we balance that out?
Yeah. So I think that this is Sam Ovens said this. He said it's the same dopamine you get from making a friend is the same as you will get from making a sale. And a lot of people
Ooh,
will just try to make friends. And
yeah,
I'm okay with that. Like you can go and make friends if you want to be a social butterfly or a socialite or Paris Hilton, whatever it is. Right? We're here to make money at the end of the day. And so that doesn't mean you can't make friends and build relationships. Like I think we have a great relationship. We can talk often. Is like you need to be focused on the sales side of things because that's what you're on the platform there for. You are building a relationship, but know that that is your intent. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with selling because you believe in your product so much that someone needs to have it so they can change their life. And so it is a mixture of that. I start initially with the relationship because if you wake up, like let's say you do 100 a day and you pitch 100 people, probably two people respond. So you wake up on
right.
Tuesday with two leads. Oh, that sucks. 100 people on Monday, if you're building relationship, 50 respond. Tuesday you have 50 leads. Right? So you just are funneling those people down and then eventually it compounds and you have thousands of leads. So I prefer to relationship with the intent of selling
Oh, okay, that
and
makes sense.
at that. Yeah.
So it's like guys with dating. It's like you don't want to just go up to a chick and ask her to marry you because, bro, that's probably not going to work. But you're going in it with the intention of, hey, eventually I do want to marry this girl. So I don't just want to be in the friend zone forever. So I think it's like you're reaching out to 50 people, however many people. You do have the intention of eventually selling to them, but you're not selling them to them all right off of the bat. So it's building the relationship, getting to know them with the intent of selling, and then you're doing that at different stages in the process for each person. And as you do that every day, if you focus on the 50 and not just the money and the results, eventually that compounds. That sounds kind of like what you're saying.
Exactly. That nailed it. Yeah.
Man, that's good, bro. Oh, what's next for you guys? What is some of the next big things that you and your brother are working on that you guys haven't done yet?
Yeah, so we started a free school community. We're trialing that out, and we're kind of transitioning to we're focusing on obviously selling our high ticket stuff. We've got a lot of clients for that, but focusing on selling more like courses and stuff that are a little bit more passive and accessible to more people. That's going to be a big focus of ours, and then more so working on bigger partnership deals. So we currently have like we did challenge two challenges this year and one this year and one last year is we're partnering with people on those and I think we have three launching next week We have one this week, so we're doing revenue share deals with those people as well. So that's another focus of ours is making sure that we grow in different ways. Yeah, partnership deals.
So so selfishly, what would you say, like, so you kind of know like what we're doing and what my vision is with this undeterred community, right? It's really to provide Christian entrepreneurs that have big crazy dreams with support. What advice or what maybe one or two things would you say, D, these are the things that you should be doing to reach those people and get in front of those people? And maybe for anyone else that has a like a community that's trying to build as well.
Yeah. I so I always look at it like what could get you to like 1,000 subscribers, right, or 1,000 members quickest? Is it better conversion? Probably not. Like a better funnel? Like no. Better VSL? Like no. What really could is like if you got 100,000 people through the funnel. It doesn't matter what your conversion is. There's 1,000 who are going to buy. So I think that a lot more people should be focused on very much top of funnel activities. So that means, though, you need to come out of your shell a little bit with content because we have a client who is a dating coach, right? And his content, he doesn't even really like his content anymore because it's going viral, but it's just not exactly him. And I think that you have to kind of be okay with that. Obviously, fit within your rules and your values and stuff like that. And all of that does as well for him. But he's got videos. He has 10 videos with 2 million views. He has a couple 100,000 followers on Instagram. And he's been able to grow his business dramatically because of that. So I think that everyone's focus should be like, how can I get more eyeballs on my stuff as often as possible? That is like,
That's very
you should.
true. I think like one thing I would add on to that I am working on too is like
I
get
lost
more
you there for a
eyeballs
sec.
on your stuff, but don't fall. And Gary V talks about this. Don't fall in love with the platform. Like for me, I'm like, man, I'm posting on Instagram. I'm trying to get more people, and then I'm like, wait, they have Christian entrepreneur groups on Facebook that I never go in, that I don't ever post in. I do like one or two posts in there, and I have like 200 comments on each. I'm like, dude, that's like the easiest way to build these relationships. And then I did like a post on TikTok, which I don't really post on that much either, yesterday, just talking about the offer and what it is. And I think there's like 20 people that were like, yo, I'm interested. So I think a lot of the times we have these platforms that we prefer to post on and maybe a specific content style versus, sounds like what you're saying is like go where they're at, post it, just get a whole bunch of dang people to like actually see what you're doing, and through that those people will come in, and if it's good, maybe like the word of mouth and whatnot.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, like yeah, it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, Facebook was our biggest one, but now like Twitter has been bigger, and we're getting more sales from it. So wherever it is go where your audience is and try to get in front of them as much as possible.
Awesome, brother. Hey man, I appreciate you coming on here, bro. Where can people, two questions actually. The first question is there, what is something maybe that you're looking, maybe not for advice for, but support or help for? Because I think we don't ask that question enough. And I think sometimes when we have these big, crazy dreams, maybe there's pieces to the puzzle that we need, that someone that's listening could reach out and connect you with those people or whatever. So, is there any big thing that you're trying to do right now that people that are listening, or as I share this, that you're like, yo, if you could connect with these people, you could do this? That way we can help you with what you're trying to do as well.
Yeah, probably like we were working on a project like of an AI SaaS company, and so I need like someone who would be willing to co-found and develop stuff with us. That would be something. Um, it's a longer term project. Don't get me wrong, but definitely a cool opportunity for people if they have that or if they know someone. That would be cool. Yeah, I appreciate you asking that.
Yeah, that'd be dope, man. That'd be super cool. Like in the future, you have this big brand. Like, yeah, I remember, like we just came to Jason from the podcast. Now you got to
Yeah.
build this big brand.
Huh.
Second question is, where can people like get in touch with you, find out what you guys are doing, and just like they like the information, they want to get your help, but they just want to connect with you. What's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, probably the best way. Like I've got Jason C Fox on many platforms, but probably the best way and where you can like quickly get to know me would be school. I have that free community. It's just school.com/Jason C Fox.
Oh,
And you just
nice.
join the community, you get access to a bunch of stuff, and yeah, that'd be the best place.
Awesome, bro. Hey, man, I appreciate you coming on here and doing this with me, man. I think it's gonna help a lot of people, and it opens the door. I think for I'm seeing it. I don't. I saw like Marley Jackson. I don't know if you know who that is, but
Yeah.
she did a post like 1 or 2 days ago just about how like, man, I wasn't into religion, and I had a mentor, and it felt like things in my business weren't working, and they asked if I've been praying. And I started getting more into Jesus that way. So I think it just gives us a space for more people to open up about it that may be moving in this direction but aren't comfortable sharing. I know that's how, like last year when we talked, you're like, man, I'm trying to figure it out before I start posting about it. So I appreciate you having the
I agree.
being
This is another
comfortable talking
push.
about that stuff here.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you for giving me the space to.
All right, bro. Appreciate y'all tuning in, man. We'll see y'all on the next one. Perfect.